For 8 Christmases, my parents left me beside Grandma Joan's dialysis chair while my sister hosted what she called the real family. They said I was the capable daughter, the one who understood medications, emergency numbers, and how to stay calm when adults became afraid. At 30, they used that same compliment against me. Mom brought Grandma to the hospital discharge room and pushed 2 packets across the table. "The first is temporary rehabilitation," she said. "The second just gives us authority if her confusion gets worse." Grandma was sitting 3 feet away, correctly naming every medication in her burgundy dialysis bag. I read the second packet. It did not prepare for possible confusion. It declared her permanently incapable and authorized my mother to place her in secured memory care. When I refused to sign, Grandma pressed the old bag into my hands. "Ask why they need your signature twice," she whispered. Something hard was hidden beneath the lining. Mom reached for the bag. Grandma held on and said, "Not this time. My name is Sadie Mercer. I'm 30 years old and I live in Indianapolis, Indiana." Grandma Joan's fall had been minor. Her hip was bruised, not broken, and she answered every nurse's question clearly. Still, Mom pushed 2 discharge packets toward me. The first arranged 6 weeks of rehabilitation. The second declared Grandma permanently confused and authorized secured memory care. Mom called both documents routine, as though changing someone's entire life required only my signature. When I hesitated, Mom used the compliment she had trained me to obey since childhood. "Mallory has 3 children," she said softly. "You've always been the capable one." Dad stood behind her holding Grandma's coat and staring at the floor. In our family, capable never meant respected. It meant available whenever everyone else had already decided the sacrifice should be mine. Mallory joined the meeting by video because her youngest child had a school performance. She appeared from her bright kitchen and said permanent placement would be easier for everyone. "Sadie deals with difficult families at work," she added. "She understands this better than we do." Grandma looked directly at the screen and asked, "Then why isn't the daughter making the decision sitting in this room?" Beside Grandma's wheelchair sat the burgundy dialysis bag I had carried since I was 10. Its corners were worn, and the zipper still caught near the side pocket. Grandma tapped it twice with one finger. That small sound carried me back 20 years, to the first Christmas morning my parents handed me the bag and told me I was mature enough to miss everything. I was 10 when Mallory hosted her first married Christmas. I had been promised cookie decorating and a place beside the tree. That morning, Mom announced Grandma's dialysis schedule had changed. I would accompany her while everyone else went to Mallory's apartment. "She's trying to create her first real family Christmas," Mom explained. I asked what that made me. No one answered. Grandma looked surprised when I climbed into her car carrying the medical bag. Mom had told her I volunteered because crowded holidays made me uncomfortable. Mom had told me Grandma personally requested my company. Neither of us challenged the story immediately. Adults had spoken, so we assumed the confusion belonged to us. That was how my family's lies usually worked. 2 women quietly doubting themselves. The dialysis clinic smelled like antiseptic and microwaved soup. Grandma was assigned treatment chair 14, beside a small radio playing Christmas music. I ate crackers from her medical bag while she rested beneath a heated blanket. A nurse brought me hot chocolate in a paper cup. Across town, my family opened presents. At the clinic, nobody remembered there was a child waiting to be collected. I asked Grandma why she needed me there. She said company made treatment easier. Then she studied my face and said, "That was your first question. Ask the second one." So I did. "Why did Mom tell you I wanted to come?" Grandma's expression changed. She looked toward the clinic doors and whispered, "Because she told me something different." The next Christmas, Mallory was pregnant. The year after that, her baby needed quiet. Then her in-laws were visiting. Medical equipment might frighten the children, and I already understood Grandma's routine. Eventually, relatives called dialysis our special tradition. Family photographs showed everyone smiling around Mallory's table. I was never openly excluded. I was simply assigned somewhere else before anyone asked me. Back in the hospital, Grandma pushed the burgundy bag into my hands before Mom could take it. At home, I opened the torn lining and found old notebook pages, a brass key, and a school transfer form dated 17 years earlier. It would have moved me to a school near Grandma's condo. Across the withdrawal line was one adult signature, Mallory Mercer. The loose pages came from Grandma's red medical notebook. At first, they listed blood pressure readings and medication changes. Then the entries shifted. December 25th. Colleen promised pickup at 3, arrived at 7:40. Sadie asked 3 times whether dinner was over. Grandma had documented ordinary details for years. The dates proved I had never volunteered to miss Christmas. I had repeatedly asked to go home. Beneath the notebook pages was a brass key with a snowflake-shaped tag. Faded markers still read, Sadie's room. I remembered finding it inside the dialysis bag when I was 13. Grandma had said she prepared a bedroom for me in her condo. Before she could explain, Mom took the key and called Grandma confused. Somehow, 17 years later, Grandma had quietly taken it back. I drove to Grandma's condo while my parents believed I was reviewing the discharge forms. The snowflake key opened a bedroom at the end of the hall. Inside stood a narrow bed, a small desk, unopened school supplies, and winter clothes, in the size I wore at 13. A wall calendar began the month I was supposed to move in. Someone had expected me. Someone else had stopped it. The school transfer form named Grandma's address and requested enrollment near her condo, while a temporary guardianship review was pending. A second page showed the application had been withdrawn 3 days later by a family representative. Mallory was 22 then, not a child following instructions. Her signature confirmed she personally collected the paperwork before the school could process it. I called Mallory and asked one question. Why did you withdraw my school transfer? She answered too quickly. Mom said Grandma was confused. I asked why the form carried Mallory's signature instead of Mom's. Silence followed. Then she said, You were needed at home. Not loved, not safer. Needed. Before hanging up, she warned me not to upset Grandma with old misunderstandings. What would you have done after finding that room? Confront the family immediately, or keep gathering proof? Share your answer, and subscribe to Before She Spoke Stories. The notebook listed a dialysis social worker named Nadine Cross. She had retired years earlier but agreed to meet after Grandma authorized contact. Nadine remembered me instantly. The little girl with homework beside chair 14, she said. Her professional notes recorded that I repeatedly asked when my parents were returning and whether I could spend Christmas with the rest of my family. Nadine's notes showed Grandma contacted my school counselor when I was 13. She asked about temporary guardianship because I was often left alone and responsible for medical tasks no child should manage. Mom responded by threatening to end every visit between us. She also claimed I hated being around illness and would feel trapped in Grandma's condo. Grandma withdrew the request within a week. Inside the bag was a handwritten statement supposedly written by teenage me. I don't want to live in a home built around illness. The sentence felt familiar. Then I remembered a school essay about visiting a Civil War hospital museum. Mom had copied one line out of context and presented it as my rejection of Grandma. Joan had believed I chose distance. I had believed she changed her mind. When I returned to the hospital, Grandma admitted she had withdrawn the guardianship effort. Your mother said she would make sure I never saw you again, she told me. I convinced myself some of you was better than none. I wanted to comfort her, but I could not erase what that choice cost. You should have asked me, I said. Grandma nodded. I know. The final notebook page came from the Christmas I was 16. Grandma had written down something she overheard in the clinic hallway. Mallory told Mom, if Sadie moves out, who takes Grandma to treatment when you're busy? Beneath it, Grandma had added one sentence. They did not stop Sadie from leaving because they needed her home. They stopped her because they needed her available. When I was 17, I spent one final Christmas beside chair 14. I asked Grandma directly, did you ever want me to live with you? She said yes. When I asked why she changed her mind, she answered, your mother showed me what you wrote. Before I could ask which letter, Dad arrived hours earlier than expected and insisted we leave immediately. While Dad argued with a nurse about the discharge time, Grandma tore several pages from her red notebook. I watched her push them through a split in the burgundy bag's lining. At the time, I thought she was hiding medical notes from Mom. 17 years later, those pages were in my apartment, proving she had preserved our real conversations because she no longer trusted the family version. After high school, I accepted a registration job at a hospital in Indianapolis. I announced it at dinner instead of asking permission. Mom laughed and said I would return once adulthood became difficult. Mallory did not ask where I would live or whether I was excited. She asked, "Who's taking Grandma to dialysis now?" That question confirmed exactly what my childhood had been organized around. I started at a hospital front desk checking insurance cards and printing wristbands. Over 13 years, I moved through financial assistance, discharge coordination, family navigation, and patient services. I became skilled at recognizing when relatives used medical language to disguise convenience. I could advocate for strangers without hesitation. With my own family, one sentence, "We need you," still made me feel 12 years old. I moved away, but my family kept calling whenever Grandma missed transportation, needed paperwork, or argued with Mom. Mallory remained the holiday host. Mom remained the organizer. I remained the emergency number. They praised my hospital experience whenever they needed answers, then reminded me I was only the granddaughter whenever I questioned their decisions. Distance changed my address, not the role they assigned me. 13 years after I left, Mom called during my lunch break. She skipped hello and said Grandma had fallen after dialysis. "We need your professional judgment," she told me. At the hospital, I found Joan alert, irritated, and asking when she could go home. Her hip was bruised. No fracture. No head injury. Temporary rehabilitation made sense. Permanent memory care did not. Before any physician recommended long-term placement, Mom had toured a secured memory care facility across town. She had selected a room and discussed the monthly rate. Dad had requested copies of Grandma's bank statements. Mallory had made a list of furniture she wanted from the condo. They called it planning ahead. But every plan assumed Joan would never return home. Keisha, my coworker, searched the realtor's name Mom had written on a folder. He specialized in fast estate and senior property sales. A photographer was already scheduled to visit Grandma's condo Friday morning. No one had asked Joan whether she wanted to sell. The permanent care packet was not only about medical control. It cleared the path to empty her home before rehabilitation even began. I asked Mom why Grandma's regular physician had not signed an incapacity statement. She said, "Doctors don't know her the way family does." So I asked the second question, "Then why do you need someone who works in a hospital to sign?" Dad looked away. Mallory ended the video call. Mom gathered the papers and said I was making a simple decision unnecessarily difficult. Would you sign the temporary rehabilitation plan while refusing the permanent one, or stop everything until an independent assessment was completed? Share your answer, and subscribe to Before She Spoke Stories. I examined the permanent packet more closely. My first signature would confirm that Grandma appeared confused. My second would verify that permanent placement was medically reasonable. Attached behind it was a property authorization allowing Mom to manage and sell the condo once placement began. They did not need my help caring for Grandma. They needed my hospital title to make taking her choices look responsible. I told Mom I needed 1 day to review both packets. She heard agreement where I had offered only time. Within an hour, she posted in the family group chat, "Sadie is finally stepping up. Grandma will be safely placed by Friday." Mallory replied with heart emojis and began assigning Joan's furniture to relatives. They believed my childhood training had worked again. Mallory called relatives and said my professional opinion confirmed Grandma's mental decline. I had said nothing of the kind. By evening, 2 cousins were thanking Mom for making the hard decision. Joan was still completing crossword puzzles in rehabilitation, but the family had already turned placement into a settled fact. They were creating witnesses before any independent clinician examined her. The realtor arrived at Joan's condo Friday morning despite my written objection. Keisha met me there while I informed him that the owner had not authorized a sale. He showed me an email from Colleen claiming she held medical and financial authority. She did not. The permanent care packet was still unsigned, yet Mom was already behaving as though my signature belonged to her. After the realtor left, Keisha found me standing in Sadie's room with the snowflake key in my hand. I told her helping Grandma might consume my job, apartment, and entire life again. Keisha said, "Advocating for Joan does not mean becoming her unpaid system. Build one that works without sacrificing you." No one in my family had ever separated love from surrender that clearly. I arranged a cognitive assessment with a geriatric specialist unaffiliated with the facility. Joan's regular physician agreed to review her capacity after rehabilitation. A hospital ethics representative paused the permanent discharge request. An elder law attorney met privately with Joan, and a home support agency evaluated transportation, meals, and dialysis assistance. For the first time, every option began with what Grandma wanted. Colleen called the specialist's office pretending Joan had become too confused to consent. She also told rehabilitation staff that I was merely an emotional granddaughter interfering with the legal decision-makers. The attempt failed because Joan had already authorized every appointment herself. When Mom learned that, she accused me of coaching Grandma. Joan answered, "Sadie asked questions. Coaching is what you do when you supply the answers." Nadine provided her dated professional notes from treatment chair 14. They recorded 8 Christmases of missed pickups, opposite explanations, and my repeated requests to attend family dinner. One entry read, "Sadie asked whether being useful was the reason she was never invited." The notes were ordinary and clinical. That made them harder to dismiss than any emotional accusation I could have made. Colleen scheduled a family meeting at Joan's condo to discuss facility payments and divide furniture. Instead, she found the burgundy bag, red notebook, snowflake key, transfer form, false statement, and both discharge packets arranged across the dining table. Joan sat at the head. I stood beside her, not in front of her. This time, nobody would speak about her as though she were absent. Mallory claimed she knew nothing about the guardianship effort. I placed the withdrawn school transfer form in front of her. She stared at her 22-year-old signature and finally admitted Mom sent her to collect it. "She said you moving out would break the family," Mallory whispered. I asked what that really meant. She looked toward the dialysis bag and answered, "There would have been no one left to handle Grandma." Joan admitted she withdrew the guardianship request after Mom threatened to end our contact. "I told myself some of you is better than none," she said. "You should have asked me," I answered. "I know," she whispered. "That's why I taught you the second question." The geriatric specialist closed her assessment folder. Mom leaned forward. "Well?" she demanded. "Tell them Joan is confused." The specialist looked at Grandma instead. "Mrs. Mercer, would you like to tell your family what you decided?" Grandma folded her hands over the burgundy bag. "I'll complete short-term rehabilitation," she said. "Then I'm going home with professional support." The specialist confirmed Joan understood her diagnosis, finances, risks, and available care options. She did not meet the standard for incapacity. Mom objected that one good conversation proved nothing. The specialist replied, "This assessment involved 3 sessions, not one conversation." The elder law attorney reviewed both discharge packets. The rehabilitation plan was legitimate. The permanent placement form was not a medical order. It was a facility admission agreement supported by statements Mom wanted me to make. Because Joan remained capable, nobody could admit her permanently without her consent. I placed the packet back on the table, unsigned, exactly where Colleen expected my obedience. Joan revoked the healthcare authorization that named Mom as her primary decision-maker. She appointed an independent professional fiduciary instead, with me listed only as backup. Colleen called that humiliating. Grandma answered, "No. Humiliating is discussing my furniture while I'm still using it." Dad finally spoke, but only to ask whether the decision could be reversed. Joan said, "Not by you." Mallory insisted she withdrew my school transfer because she believed Grandma was too sick to raise me. I opened Nadine's notes. Our parents had considered Joan healthy enough to supervise me alone through 8 holiday treatments, medication changes, and late-night pickups. Mallory looked at the page and admitted the real reason. My leaving would have forced her and Mom to share Grandma's care. Dad tried to present himself as someone who had simply avoided conflict. The red notebook told a different story. He drove me to dialysis, ignored my requests to attend Christmas, and collected us hours late. He had also carried the guardianship withdrawal papers to the school. "I never made the decisions," he said. I answered, "You transported every decision and called that innocence." Grandma's return plan included home health visits, dialysis transportation, medication delivery, meal support, and an emergency response service. I helped coordinate the system, but I refused to become it. Mom called me selfish for not moving into Joan's condo. Keisha reminded me that a safe plan should survive one person taking a weekend off. For the first time, Grandma's care did not require my disappearance. The realtor canceled the listing, and the memory care facility released the reserved room. Joan's attorney documented the false incapacity statements, the withdrawn transfer, and the copied school essay. Decades-old conduct did not produce an instant prosecution, but it created a formal record. Mom and Dad could no longer approach providers claiming unanimous family authority. Every future decision required Joan's direct consent. Before leaving rehabilitation, Grandma apologized without asking me to erase the past. "I was afraid your mother would take you away completely," she said. "I chose the part of you I could keep." I told her that choice still left me in a house where being useful mattered more than being wanted. She nodded. "I know. Regret is not the same as repair." Was I right to protect Grandma without becoming her full-time caregiver again? Tell me in the comments, and subscribe to Before She Spoke Stories. Several weeks later, I opened the old bedroom with the snowflake key. The desk, lamp, winter clothes, and unopened school supplies remained exactly where Joan had placed them 17 years earlier. I sat beneath the outdated calendar and understood something I had never allowed myself to believe. I had been wanted somewhere. Joan had failed to fight hard enough, but she had still made room. Before I left, I placed the permanent memory care packet inside the desk drawer, still unsigned. Grandma stood in the doorway holding the burgundy bag, now filled with documents supporting her own decisions. "Are you angry I kept the room?" she asked. "No," I said. "I'm angry they made both of us believe the other closed the door." Outside, I locked the condo and returned the snowflake key to her hand. For 20 years, my family called me capable whenever they needed my obedience. At 30, I finally used that capability without surrendering myself.